Good afternoon, beloveds. It is Saturday afternoon, and Saturday afternoon is when I set aside time to read one of the, influential people of New Thought. I did Emma Curtis Hopkins' Christian Mental Science on Saturday. I did Reading the Bible Again for the First Time by Marcus J. Borg on a Saturday. And for right now, I am doing Emerson's essays. I'm only going to do 5 essays. I may go back and do more later, but right now I'm doing 5 essays because I want to do High Mysticism by Emma Curtis Hopkins. But the 5 essays that I'm doing are the 5 essays that Reverend Jesse is going to go over in his Emerson class. He's going to do an Emerson class in, I believe, late June. So I'm reading the essays now so that you can listen if you would like, because reading Emerson isn't always the most fun. But I have found that reading them out loud has been very helpful. And I don't know what my cat is licking. So I don't know if you can hear that sound. So I'm just like, no, let's stop that. Dante is in here. I might be able to get him. No. I was going to say I might be able to get him to make a cameo, but he got down. So never mind. Maybe later. This, for people who like to read along, this is the edition that I am using. It's the one that I've had forever. And I found it really interesting when I was at the convention a week ago. I walked past a table and there was one of these books laying on the table. And I was like, whoa, why is there an Emerson book sitting there? But it was. So, this is The Perennial Library by Harper and Row Publishers. I'm not sure when this one was published, but, so if you want to know which edition I'm using, that's this one. And we are going to do the Oversoul today. We've done Spiritual Law, Circles, and now we are doing the Oversoul. And then in the next couple of weeks, we will do Compensation and Self-Reliance. So, and I'm doing this, like I said, this is for Creative Life Spiritual Center. The website is creativelife.org. If you are interested in the email, info@creativelife.org. That'll get you the newsletter. You get one email a week. It's a, hang on. The hot links are hot and blind CC. And I'm doing this on the social media. So, feel free to like, subscribe, follow based on which platform you're on for those. But, okay. Emerson's essays. The Oversoul. And he starts this one out with a quote from Henry Moore. But souls, that of its own good life partake, they love as their own self, dear as their eye, they are to them, they'll never forsake them, for they shall die, then God itself shall die. They live, and they live in blessed eternity. Okay. There is a difference between one and another hour of life in their authority and subsequent effect. Our faith comes in moments. Our vice is habitual. Okay. That's a pretty damning statement right there. Yet there is a depth in those brief moments which constrains us to ascribe more reality to them than to all other experiences. For this reason, the argument which is always forthcoming to silence those who conceive extraordinary hopes of humanity, namely the appeal to experience, is forever invalid and vain. A mightier hope abolishes despair. We give up the past to the objector, and yet we hope. They must explain this hope. We grant that human life is mean, but how did we find out that it was mean? What is the ground of this uneasiness of ours, of this old discontent? What is the universal sense of want and ignorance but the fine innuendo by which the great soul makes its enormous claim? Why do people feel that the natural history of humanity has never been written, but always they are leaving behind what you have said of them, and it becomes old, and books of metaphysics worthless? That does end in a question mark, by the way. The philosophy of 6,000 years has not searched the chambers and magazines of the soul. In its experiments, there has always remained, in the last analysis, a residuum it could not resolve. Humanity is a stream whose source is hidden. Always our being is descending into us from we know not whence. The most exact calculator has no prescience that somewhat incalculable may not balk the very next moment. I am constrained every moment to acknowledge a higher origin for events than the will I call mine. As with events, so is it with thoughts. When I watch that flowing river, which out of regions I see not, pours for a season its streams into me, I see that I am a pensioner, not a cause, but a surprised spectator of this ethereal water, that I desire and look up and put myself in the attitude of reception, but from some alien energy the visions come. The supreme critic on all the errors of the past and the present, and the only prophet of that which must be, is the great nature in which we rest as the earth lies soft in the soft arms of the atmosphere. That unity, that oversoul within every person's particular being is contained and made one with all other. That common heart of which all sincere conversation is the worship, to which all right action is submission, that overpowering reality which confutes our tricks and talents and constrains everyone to pass for what they are and to speak from their character and not from their tongue. And which evermore tends to pass into our thought and hand and become wisdom and virtue and power and beauty. We live in succession, in division, in parts, in particles. Meantime, within humanity is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. And this deep power in which we exist and whose beatitude is all accessible to us is not only self-sufficing and perfect in every hour, but the act of seeing and the things seen, the seer and the spectacle, the subject and the object are one. We see the world piece by piece, as the sun, the moon, the animal, the tree, but the whole, of which these things are the shining parts, is the soul. Only by the vision of that wisdom can the horoscope of the ages be read, and by falling back on our better thoughts, by yielding to the spirit of prophecy which is innate in every person, that we can know what it saith. Every person's words who speak from that life must sound vain to those who do not dwell in the same thought on their own part. I dare not speak for it. My words do not carry its august sense. They fall short and cold. Only itself can inspire whom it will, and behold, their speech shall be lyrical and sweet and universal as the rising of the wind. Yet I desire, even by profane words, if sacred I may not use, to indicate the heaven of this deity and report what hints I have collected of the transcendent simplicity and energy of the highest law. If we consider what happens in conversation, in reveries, in remorse, in times of passion, in surprises, in the instructions of dreams, wherein often we see ourselves in masquerade, the droll disguises only magnifying and enhancing a real element and forcing it on our distinct notice, we shall catch many hints that will broaden and lighten into knowledge of the secret of nature. All goes to show that the soul in humanity is not an organ, but animates and exercises all the organs. It is not a function, like the power of memory, of calculation, of comparison, but uses these as hands and feet. Is not a faculty, but a light. Is not the intellect or the will, but the master of the intellect and will. Is the vast background of our being in which they lie, an immensity not possessed, that cannot be possessed. From within or from behind, a light shines through us upon the things and makes us aware that we are nothing, but the light is all. A person is the facade of a temple wherein all wisdom and all good abide. What we commonly call a person, the eating, drinking, planting, counting person, does not, as we know them, present themselves, but misrepresents themselves. Then we do not respect, but the soul, whose organ they are, would they let it appear through their action, would make our knees bend. When it breathes through their intellect, it is genius. When it breathes through their will, it is virtue. When it flows through their affection, it is love. And the blindness of the intellect begins when it would be something of itself. The weakness of the will begins when the individual would be something of themselves. All reform aims in some one particular to let the great soul have its way through us. In other words, to engage us to obey. Of this pure nature, every person is at some time sensible. Language cannot paint it with their colors. It is too subtle. It is undefinable, unmeasurable, but we know that it pervades and contains us. We know that all spiritual being is in humanity. A wise old proverb says, God comes to see us without bell. That is, as there is no screen or ceiling between our heads and the infinite heavens, so is there no bar or wall in the soul, where humanity, the effect, ceases, and God, the cause, begins. It's a weird phrase. The walls are taken away. We lie open on one side to the depths of spiritual nature, to all the attributes of God. Justice we see and know. Love, freedom, power. These natures no person ever got above, but always they tower over us, and most in the moment when our interests tempt us to wound them. The sovereignty of this nature whereof we speak is made known by its independency of those limitations which circumscribe us on every hand. The soul circumscribes all things. As I have said, it contradicts all experience. In a like manner, it abolishes time and space. The influence of the senses has in most people overpowered the mind to the degree that the walls of time and space have come to look solid, real, and insurmountable. And to speak with levity of these limits is, in the world, the sign of insanity. Yet time and space are but inverse measures of the force of the soul. A person is capable of abolishing them both. The spirit sports with time, can crowd eternity into an hour, or stretch an hour into eternity. We are often made to feel that there is another youth and age than that which is measured from the year of our natural birth. Some thoughts always find us young and keep us so. Such a thought is the love of the universal and eternal beauty. Every person parts from that contemplation with the feeling that it rather belongs to ages than to mortal life. The least activity of the intellectual powers redeems us in a degree from the influences of time. In sickness, in languor, give us a strain of poetry or a profound sentence, and we are refreshed. Or produce a volume of Plato or Shakespeare, or remind us of their names, and instantly we come into a feeling of longevity. See how deep the divine thought demolishes centuries and millenniums and makes itself present through all ages. Is the teachings of the Christ less effective now than it was when first his mouth was opened? The emphasis of facts and persons to my soul has nothing to do with time. And so always the soul scale is one. The scale of the senses and the understanding is another. Before the great revelations of the soul, time, space, and nature shrink away. In common speech, we refer all things to time as we habitually refer the immensely sundered stars to one concave sphere. And so we say that the judgment is distant or near, that the millennium approaches, that a day of certain political, moral, social reform is at hand, and the like, when we mean that in the nature of things, one of the facts we contemplate is external and fugitive, and the other is permanent and connate with the soul. The things we now esteem fixed shall, one by one, detach themselves like ripe fruit from our experience and fall. Now that is a sentence. Every now and again, Emerson can be really interesting and fairly difficult because he's talking on a different level. He says, I'm trying. And yet what he's doing is elevating, and it's amazing. And then he throws a sentence like that. The things we now esteem fixed shall, one by one, detach themselves like ripe fruit from our experience and fall. Oh my goodness, that is a sentence. All right. The wind shall blow them, none knows whither. The landscape, the figures, Boston, London, are facts as fugitive as any institution past, or any whiff of mist or smoke. And so is society, and so is the world. The soul looketh steadily forwards, creating a world always before her, leaving worlds always behind her. Ugh. She has no dates, nor rights, nor persons, nor specialities, nor people. The soul knows only the soul. All else is idle weeds for her wearing. After its own law, and not by arithmetic, is the rate of its progress to be computed. The soul's advances are not made by gradation, such as can be represented by motion in a straight line, but rather by ascension of state, such as can be represented by metamorphosis. From the egg to the worm, from the worm to the fly, the growths of genius are of a certain total character that does not advance the elect individual first over John, then Adam, then Richard, and give to each the pain of discovered inferiority, but by every throe of growth, the person expands where they work, passing at each pulse. Hang on. Ugh. Let me back up a couple of words here. But by every throe of growth, the person expands there where they work, passing at each pulsation, classes, populations of people. With each divine impulse, the mind rends the thin rinds of the visible and finite and comes out into eternity and inspires and expires its air. Oh. It converses with truths that have always been spoken in the world and becomes conscious of a closer sympathy with Zeno and Arian than with the persons in the house. Okay, Zeno, Zeno, and Arian, Arrian. I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about there. Might be worth a Google. But point being, he's saying your soul has more in common with what is not, what is beyond than the people in the house. So, all right, let's go back. This is the law of moral and of mental gain. The simple rise, as by specific levity, is not into a particular virtue, but into the region of all virtues. Okay. They are in the spirit which contains them all. The soul is superior to all the particulars of merit. The soul requires purity, but purity is not it. Requires justice, but justice is not that. Requires beneficence, but is somewhat better, so that there is a kind of dissent and accommodation felt when we leave speaking of moral nature to urge a virtue which it enjoins. For to the soul, in her pure action, all virtues are natural, and not painfully acquired. Speak to their heart, and the person suddenly becomes virtuous. Within the same sentiment is the germ of intellectual growth, which obeys the same law. Those who are capable of humility, of justice, of love, of aspiration, are already on a platform that commands the science and arts, speech and poetry, action and grace. For whoso dwells in this moral beatitude already does anticipate those special powers which people prize so highly. Just as love does justice to all the gifts of the object beloved, the lover has no talent, no skill, which passes for quite nothing with their enamored maiden. However little she may possess of related faculty, and the heart, which abandons itself to the supreme mind, finds itself related to all its works, and will travel a royal road to particular knowledge and powers. Yeah, he's lost me. What? Although if the soul grows by ascension, it seems like he's saying the same thing about intellect. It's not measurable across a straight line, but yeah. All right. Let's get back to it and see if he starts making sense again. The heart which abandons itself to the supreme mind finds itself related to all its works and will travel a royal road to particular knowledges and powers. For in ascending to this primary and aboriginal sentiment, we have come to our remote station on the circumference instantaneously to the center of the world, where, as in the closet of God, we see causes and anticipate the universe, which is but a slow effect. Okay, hang on. When the heart abandons itself to the supreme mind, we come from our remote station on the circumference instantaneously to the center. And we see the causes and can anticipate the universe, which is but a slow effect. Bears thinking about. One mode of the divine teaching is the incarnation of the Spirit in a form. In forms like my own, I live in society with persons who answer to thoughts in my own mind, or outwardly express a certain obedience to the great instincts to which I live. I see its presence to them. I am certified of a common nature, and so these other souls, these separated selves, draw me as nothing else can. They stir in me new emotions we call passion, of love, hatred, fear, admiration, pity. Thence come conversation, competition, persuasion, cities, and war. Persons are supplementary to the primary teaching of the soul. In youth, we are made for persons. Childhood and youth see all the world in them. But the larger experience of humanity discovers the identical nature appearing through them all. Persons themselves acquaint us with the impersonal. In all conversation between two persons, tacit reference is made as to a third party, to a common nature. That third party or common nature is not social. It is impersonal, is God. And so in groups where debate is earnest, and especially on great questions of thought, the company become aware of their unity, aware that the thought rises to an equal heart in all bosoms, that all have a spiritual property in what was said, as well as the sayer. They all wax wiser than they were. It arches over them like a temple, this unity of thought in which every heart beats with a nobler sense of power and duty, and thinks and acts with unusual solemnity. All are conscious of attaining a higher self-possession. It shines for all. There is a certain wisdom of humanity which is common to the greatest people with the lowest, and which our ordinary education often labors to silence and obstruct. Okay. The mind is one, and the best minds, which love truth for its own sake, think much less of property in truth. Thankfully, they accept it everywhere and do not label or stamp it with any person's name, for it is theirs long beforehand. It is theirs from eternity. The learned and the studious of thought have no monopoly on wisdom. Their violence of direction in some degree disqualifies them to think truly. We owe many valuable observations to people who are not very acute or profound, and who say the thing without effort which we want, and have long been hunting in vain. The action of the soul is oftener in that which is felt and left unsaid than in that which is said in any conversation. It broods over every society, and they unconsciously seek it in each other. We know better than we do. We do not yet possess ourselves, and we know at the same time we are much more. I feel the same truth, how often in my trivial conversation with my neighbors, that somewhat higher in each of us overlooks this byplay, and Jove nods to Jove from behind each of us. People descend to meet. In their habitual and mean services to the world, for which they forsake their native nobleness, They resemble those Arabian sheiks who dwell in mean houses and affect an external poverty to escape the rapacity of the pacha, and reserve all their display of wealth for their interior and guarded retirements. As it is present in all persons, so it is in every period of life. It is adult already in the infant person. In my dealing with my child, my Latin and Greek, my accomplishments and my money stead me nothing. They are all lost on him, but as much soul as I have avails. If I am merely wileful, he gives me a Roland for an Oliver, sets his will against mine, 1 for 1, and leaves me, if I please, the degradation of beating him by my superiority of strength. But if I renounce my will and act for the soul, setting that up as umpire between us two, out of his young eyes looks the same soul. He reveres and loves me. The soul is the perceiver and revealer of truth. We know truth when we see it. Let skeptic and scoffers say what they choose. Foolish people ask you, when you have spoken what they do not wish to hear, how do you know it is truth and not an error of your own? We know truth when we see it from opinion, as we know when we are awake that we are awake. It was a grand sentence of Emanuel Swedenborg, which would alone indicate the greatness of that man's perception. It is no proof of a person's understanding to be able to affirm whatever they please, but to be able to discern that which is true, and that which is false is false. This is the mark and character of intelligence. In the book I read, the good thought returns to me, as every truth will, the image of the whole soul. To the bad thought, which I find in it, the same soul becomes a discerning, separating sword and lops it away. We are wiser than we know, if we will not interfere with our thought, but will act entirely, or see how the thing stands in God, we know the particular thing and everything and every person. For the maker of all things and all persons stands behind us and casts its dread omniscience through us over things. But beyond this recognition of its own in particular passages of the individual's experience, it also reveals truth. And here we should seek to reinforce ourselves by its very presence, and to speak with a worthier, loftier strain of that advent. For the soul's communication of truth is the highest event in nature, for it then does not give somewhat of itself, but gives itself, or passes into and becomes that person whom it enlightens, or in proportion to that truth they receive, it takes them to itself. We distinguish the announcements of the soul, its manifestations of its own nature, by the term revelation. These are always attended by the emotion of the sublime. For this communication is an influx of the divine mind into our mind. It is an ebb of the individual rivulet before the flowing surges of the sea of life. Every distinct apprehension of this central commandment agitates people with awe and delight. A thrill passes through all people at the reception of new truth or at the performance of a great action which comes out of the heart of nature. In these communications, the power to see is not separated from the will to do, but the insight proceeds from obedience, and the obedience proceeds from a joyful perception. What? Okay, so the power to see is not separated from the will to do, but the insight proceeds from obedience, and the obedience proceeds from a joyful perception. Okay. I repeat them because it's something that, it's like, okay, I'm thinking about this. So anytime you hear me repeat something, it's because, like, I'm contemplating it. Obedience proceeds from a joyful perception. Okay. Every moment when the individual feels themselves invaded by it is memorable. Always, I believe, by the necessity of our constitution, a certain enthusiasm attends the individual's consciousness of that divine presence. The character and duration of this enthusiasm varies with the state of the individual, from an ecstasy and trance and prophetic inspiration, which is its rarer appearance, to the faintest glow of virtuous emotion, in which form it warms, like our household fires, all the families and associations of people, and makes society possible. A certain tendency to insanity has always attended the opening of the religious sense in people. Let me read you that one again, okay? A certain tendency to insanity has always attended the opening of the religious sense in people, as if blasted with excess of light. The trances of Socrates, the union of Plotinus, the vision of Porphyry, the conversion of Paul, the aurora of Beeman, the convulsions of George Fox and his Quakers, the illuminations of Swedenborg are of this kind. What was in the case of these remarkable persons a ravishment has, in innumerable instances in common life, been exhibited in less striking manner. Everywhere, the history of religion betrays a tendency to enthusiasm. The rapture of the Moravian and the Quietists, the opening of the internal sense of the word, in the language of the New Jerusalem Church, the revival of the Calvinistic churches, the experiences of the Methodists are varying forms of that shudder of awe and delight with which the individual soul always mingles with the universal soul. The nature of these revelations is always the same. They are perceptions of the absolute law. They are solutions of the soul's own questions. They do not answer the questions which the understanding asks, The soul answers never by words, but by the thing itself that is inquired after. Revelation is the disclosure of the soul. The popular notion of a revelation is that it is a telling of fortunes. In past oracles of the soul, the understanding seeks to find answers to sensual questions and undertakes to tell from God how long people shall exist, what their hands shall do, and who shall be their company, adding even names and dates and places. But we must pick no locks. We must check this low curiosity. An answer in words is delusive. It is really no answer to the question you ask. Do not require a description of the countries towards which you sail. The description does not describe them to you, and tomorrow you will arrive there and know them by inhabiting them. People ask of the immortality of the soul and the employments of heaven and the state of the sinner and so forth. They even dream that Jesus has left replies to precisely these interrogatories. Never a moment did the sublime spirit speak to their patois. To truth, justice, love, the attributes of the soul, the ideas of immutableness is essentially associated. Jesus, living in these moral sentiments, heedless of sensual fortunes, heeding only the manifestation of these, never made the separation of the idea of duration from the essence of these attributes, never uttered a syllable concerning the duration of the soul. It was left to his disciples to sever duration from the moral elements and to teach the immortality of the soul as doctrine and maintain it by evidence. The moment the doctrine of immortality is separately taught, humanity is already fallen. The flowing of love, in the adoration of humility, there is no question of continuance. No inspired person ever asks this question or condescends to these evidences. For the soul is true to itself, and the person in whom it is shed abroad cannot wander from the present, which is infinite, to the future, which would be finite. These questions, which we lust to ask about the future, are a confession of sin. God has no answer for them. No answer in words can reply to a question of things. It is not an arbitrary decree of God, but in the nature of humanity, that a veil shuts down on the facts of tomorrow. For the soul will not have us read any other cipher but that of cause and effect. By this veil, which curtains events, it instructs the children of people to live in today. The only mode of obtaining an answer to these questions of the senses is to forego all low curiosity and accepting the tide of being which floats us into the secret nature, work and live, and in all unawares the advancing soul has built and forged for itself a new condition, and the question and the answer are one. The rain has arrived. Thus is the soul the perceiver and revealer of truth. By the same fire, serene, impersonal, perfect, which burns until it shall dissolve all things into the waves and surges of an ocean of light, we see and know each other, and what spirit each is of. Who can tell the grounds of their knowledge of the character of the several individuals in their circle of friends? No person. Yet their acts and words do not disappoint them. In that person, though they know no ill of them, they put no trust. In that other, though they had seldom met, authentic signs had yet passed to signify they might be trusted as one who had an interest in their own character. We know each other very well. Which of us has just been to themselves? And whether that which we teach or behold is only an aspiration or is our honest effort also. We are all discerners of spirits. That diagnosis lies aloft in our life or unconscious power, not in the understanding. The whole intercourse of society, its trade, its religion, its friendships, its quarrels, is one wide judicial investigation of character. In full court, or in small committee, or confronted face to face, accuser and accused, people offer themselves to be judged. Against their will, they exhibit those decisive trifles by which character is read. But who judges? And what? Not our understanding. We do not read them by learning or craft. No. The wisdom of the wise person consists herein that they do not judge them. They let them judge themselves and merely read and record their own verdict. Which brings me back to that opening line of vices being habitual. Okay. People will always tell you who they are. They really will. By virtue of this inevitable nature, private will is overpowered, and maugre our efforts or our imperfections, your genius will speak from you and mine from me. That which we are, we shall teach, not voluntarily, but involuntarily. Thoughts come into our minds through avenues which we never left open, and thoughts go out of our minds through avenues which we never voluntarily opened. Character teaches over our head. The infallible index of true progress is found in the tone the person takes. Neither their age, nor their breeding, nor company, nor books, nor actions, nor talents, nor altogether can hinder them from being deferential to a higher spirit than their own. If they have not found their home in God, their manners, their forms of speech, the turn of their sentences, the build, shall I say, of all their opinions, will involuntarily confess it. Let them brave it out how they will. If they have found their center, the deity will shine through them, through all the disguises of ignorance, of ungenial temperament, of unfavorable circumstances. The tone of seeking is one, and the tone of having is another. The great distinction between teachers, sacred or literary, between poets like Herbert and poets like Pope, between philosophers like Spinoza, Kant, and Coleridge, and philosophers like Locke, Paley, Mackintosh, and Stewart, between people of the world who are reckoned accomplished talkers, and here and there a fervent mystic, prophesying, half insane, under the infinitude of their thought, is that one class speaks from within or from experience as parties and possessors of the fact, and the other class from without as spectators merely, or perhaps as acquainted with the fact on the evidence of third persons. It is of no use to preach to me from without. I can do that too easily myself. Jesus speaks always from within, and in a degree that transcends all others. In that is the miracle. That includes the miracle. My soul believes beforehand that it ought so to be. All people stand continually in the expectation of the appearance of such a teacher. But if a person does not speak from within the veil, where the word is one with that it tells of, let them lowly confess it. The same omniscience flows into the intellect and makes what we call genius. Much of the wisdom of the world is not wisdom, and the most illuminated class of people are no doubt superior to literary fame and are not writers. Among the multitude of scholars and authors, we feel no howling presence. We are sensible of a knack and skill rather than of inspiration. They have a light and know not whence it comes and call it their own. Their talent is some exaggerated faculty, some overgrown member, so that their strength is a disease. Oh. That seems like a rather strong condemnation. In these instances, the intellectual gifts do not make the impression of virtue, but almost of vice. And we feel that a person's talents stand in the way of their advancement in truth. But genius is religious. It is a larger imbibing of the common heart. Okay. It is not anomalous, but more like and not less like other people. There is in all great poets a wisdom of humanity which is superior to any talents they exercise. The author, the wit, the partisan, the fine gentle person does not take the place of the person. Humanity shines in Homer, in Chaucer, in Spencer, in Shakespeare, in Milton. They are content with truth. They use the positive degree. They seem frigid and phlegmatic to those who have been spiced with the frantic passion and violent coloring of the inferior but popular writers. For they are poets by the free course which they allow to the informing soul, which through their eyes beholdeth again and blesses the things which it hath made. The soul is superior to its knowledge, wiser than any of its works. The great poet makes us feel our own wealth, and then we think less of their compositions. Their greatest communication to our minds is to teach us to despise all they have done. Shakespeare carries us to such a lofty strain of intelligent activity as to suggest a wealth which beggars his own. And we then feel that the splendid works which he has created, and which in other hours we extol as some sort of self-existent poetry, takes no stronger hold of real nature than the shadow of a passing traveler on the rock. The inspiration which uttered itself in Hamlet and Lear could utter things as good from day to day forever. Why then should I make account of Hamlet and Lear, as if we had not the soul from which they fell as syllables of the tongue? This energy does not descend into individual life on any other condition than entire possession. It comes to the lowly and simple. It comes to whomever it will put off what is foreign and proud. It comes as insight. It comes as serenity and grandeur. When we see these who it inhabits, we are apprised of a new degree of greatness. From that inspiration, the person comes back with a changed tone. They do not talk with people with an eye to their opinion. They try them. It requires us to be plain and true. The vain traveler attempts to embellish their life by quoting my lord and the prince and the countess, who thus said or did to him. The ambitious vulgar show you their spoons and brooches and rings and preserve their cards and compliments. The more cultivated in their account of their own experience call out the pleasing poetic circumstance, the visit to Rome, the person of genius they saw, the brilliant friend they know, still further on perhaps the gorgeous landscape and the mountain lights, the mountain thoughts they enjoyed yesterday, and so seek to throw a romantic color over their life. But the soul that ascendeth to worship the great God is plain and true, has no rose color, no fine friends, no chivalry, no adventure, does not want admiration, dwells in the hour that now is, in the earnest experience of the common day, by reason of the present moment, and the mere trifle having become porous to thought, and bibulous to the sea of light. Converse with a mind that is grandly simple, and literature looks like word-catching. The simplest utterances are worthiest to be written, yet are they so cheap and so things of course that in the infinite riches of the soul it is like gathering a few pebbles off the ground, or bottling a little air in a vial. Then when the whole earth and atmosphere are ours, the mere author in such society is like a pickpocket among gentle people who has come to steal a gold button or pin. Nothing can pass there or make you one of the circle, but the casting aside of your trappings and the dealing person to person in naked truth, plain confession, and omniscient affirmation. Souls such as these treat you as gods would, walk as gods in the earth, accepting without any admiration your wit, your bounty, your virtue even. Say rather your act of duty, for your virtue they own as their proper blood, royal as themselves, and over-royal, and the parent of gods. But what rebuke their plain fraternal bearing casts on the mutual flattery with which authors solace each other and wound themselves. These flatter not. I do not wonder that these people go to see Cromwell and Christina and Charles II and James I and the Grand Turk, for they are in their own elevation the fellows of kings, and must feel the servile tone of the conversation in the world. They must always be a godsend to princes, for they confront them, a king to a king, without ducking or concession, and give a high nature the refreshment and satisfaction of resistance, of plain humanity, or even companionship and of new ideas. They leave them wiser and superior men. Souls like these make us feel that sincerity is more excellent than flattery. Deal so plainly with people as to constrain the utmost sincerity and destroy all hope of trifling with you. It is the highest compliment you can pay. Their highest praising, said Milton, is not flattery, and their plainest advice is a kind of praising. Ineffable is the union of humanity and God in every act of the soul. The simplest person who in their highest integrity worships God, becomes God. Yet, forever and ever, the influx of this better and universal self is new and unsearchable. Ever it inspires awe and astonishment. How dear, how soothing to humanity arises the idea of God peopling the lonely place, effacing the scars of our mistakes and disappointment. When we have broken our God of tradition and ceased from our God of rhetoric, then may God fire the heart with its presence. It is the doubling of the heart itself, nay, the infinite enlargement of the heart with the power of growth to the new infinity on every side. It inspires in humanity an infallible trust. They have not the conviction, but the sight that is the best is the true, and may in that thought easily dismiss all particular uncertainties and fears, and adjourn to the sure revelation of time the solution of their private riddles. They are sure that their welfare is dear to the heart of being. In the presence of law to their mind, they are overflowed with a reliance so universal that it sweeps away all cherished hopes and the most stable projects of mortal condition in its flood. They believe they cannot escape from their good. The things that are really for thee gravitate to thee. You are running to seek your friend. Let your feet run, but your mind need not. If you do not find them, will you not acquiesce that it is best that you should not find them? For there is a power which, as it is in you, is in them also, and could therefore very well bring you together, if it were for the best. You are preparing with eagerness to go and render a service to which your talent and your taste invite you, the love of people and the hope of fame. Has it not occurred to you that you have no right to go unless you are equally willing to be prevented from going? Oh, believe, as thou livest, that every sound that is spoken over the round world, which thou ought to hear, will vibrate on thine ear. Every proverb, every book, every byword that belongs to thee for aid or comfort shall surely come home through open or winding passages. Every friend whom not thy fantasy will but the great and tender heart in thee craveth, shall lock thee in their embrace. And this because the heart in thee is the heart in all. Not a valve, not a wall, not an intersection is there anywhere in nature but one blood rolls uninterruptedly and endless circulation through all people as the water of the globe is all one sea, and truly seen, its tide is one. Let humanity then learn the revelation of all nature and all thought to their heart. This, namely, that the highest dwells in them, that the sources of nature are in their own mind, if the sentiment of duty is there. But if they would know what the great God speaketh, they must go into their closet and shut the door, as Jesus said. God will not make itself manifest to cowards. God must listen greatly to itself, withdrawing itself from all the accents of other people's devotions. Their prayers even are hurtful to them until they have made it their own. Our religion vulgarly stands on numbers of believers. Whenever the appeal is made, no matter how indirectly, to numbers, proclamation is then and there made that religion is not. They that find God a sweet enveloping thought to them never counts their company. When I sit in that presence, who shall dare come in? When I rest in perfect humility, when I burn with pure love, what can Calvin or Swedenborg say? It makes no difference whether the appeal is to the numbers or to one. The faith that stands on authority is not faith. It's one of his more famous quotes right there. Jesse uses it on a regular basis. The faith that stands on authority is not faith. The reliance on authority measures the decline of religion, the withdrawal of the soul. The position people have given to Jesus now for many centuries of history is a position of authority. It characterizes themselves. It cannot alter the eternal facts. Great is the soul and plain. It is no flatterer. It is no follower. It never appeals from itself. It always believes in itself. Before the immense possibilities of humanity, all mere experience, all past biography, however spotless and sainted, shrinks away. Before that holy heaven which our presentiments foreshadow us, we cannot easily praise any form of life we have seen or read of. We not only affirm that we have few great men, but absolutely speaking, that we have none. That we have no history, no record of any character or mode of living that entirely contents us. The saints and the demigods whom history worships, we are constrained to accept with a grain of allowance. Though in our lonely hours we draw new strength out of their memory, yet pressed on our attention, they are but the thoughtless and customary. They fatigue and invade. The soul gives itself alone, original, and pure to the lonely, original, and pure, who on that condition gladly inhabits, leads, and speaks through it. Then it is glad, young, and nimble. It is not wise, but it sees through all things. It is not called religious, but it is innocent. It calls the light its own and feels that the grass grows and the stone falls by a law inferior to and dependent on its nature. Behold, it saith, I am born into the great, the universal mind. I, the imperfect, adore my own perfect. I am somehow receptive of the great soul, and thereby I do overlook the sun and the stars, and feel them to be but the fair accidents and effects which must change and pass. More and more the surges of the everlasting nature enter into me, and I become public and human in my regards and actions. So come I to live in thoughts and acts with energies which are immortal, thus revering the soul and learning, as the ancients said, that its beauty is immense. Humanity will come to see that the world is the perennial miracle which the soul worketh, and be less astonished at particular wonders. They will learn that there is no profane history, that all history is sacred, that the universe is represented in an atom in a moment of time. They will weave no longer a spotted life of shreds and patches, but they will live with a divine unity. They will cease from that which is base and frivolous like their own life, and be content with all places and any service they can render. They will calmly front the morrow in the negligency of that trust which carries God with it, and so hath already the whole future in the bottom of the heart. I love how he just kind of trails off. It's like he doesn't end with this any great statement. He's just like, this is the way it is. This is the way it is. Oh, well, that was The Oversoul by Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Yep. He's very inscrutable. And I will say this about Emerson. Every time I think I've got him figured out, he throws another line at me and I'm like, what did he just say? And that's what it is. So, all right. That is Emerson. I am now going to go take a long drink and, go figure out what my cats are up to and see if it's still raining. So, I hope you enjoyed The Oversoul by Emerson. I'll be back tomorrow to get back on with the new design for living. And next Saturday, it may not be next Saturday. It may be next Sunday. Depends on what my plans for Saturday end up being. We will do compensation. But I will have all 5 of the essays read for Jesse's class before he starts it, because it's the end of June and it's not even May yet. So, blessings be upon you. I will see you next